Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk to you about the No Penny Left Behind Challenge. No Penny Left Behind Challenge is a budget. It's a comprehensive budget. The No Penny Left Behind Challenge is a blueprint for budget success. Bear with me over the next few videos. We have a lot to unpack here, okay? Part 1, we're gonna talk about our income. Part 2, we're gonna talk about expenses. Part 3, we're gonna talk about the accounts that we'll need to have set up, our savings and checking. And then part 4, we're gonna talk about how to manage and monitor everything. And hopefully, with all of these 4 parts put together, we're gonna set ourselves up for success in the upcoming year. Okay, so let's share my Excel spreadsheet. I created this in Microsoft Office. And how I'm doing it is I'm listing out my income. I start with my income from my W-2, and then you can start listing out the categories of income. So if you have income from child support, alimony, if you're getting Social Security, annuities, payments, any type of income that you have coming in. If you're in school and you're receiving grant money, scholarship money, even student loans, I would list this as income coming in because you're using this money to pay for your daily and monthly expenses. So once you have all of your income sources listed out, I found it helpful to later break that down by hourly, daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, even the year. I found it helpful for me when budgeting for the entire year. You may not need this, depending on where you are. But the great thing about using Excel is if you think of something that could help you, all you have to do is add the column, and then you're able to sort and filter accordingly. Okay, so just to let you know, this footage is pre-recorded footage of me actually setting up and revising and editing and talking through the Excel spreadsheet. So some of these screenshots, you're not able to see the exact numbers, but I'm going to walk you through it. All right, so once you have all of your income sources listed and then you have your frequency, you can, kind of mess around with the tabs, add in your dollar amounts, and I don't have formulas pre-programmed. All I'm doing is just adding up everything, and I'm going to do a sum total at the end and bring that sum total over to the next tab where we're going to talk about our expenses and our accounts. So I have one tab created on the Excel spreadsheet that just has my income, and then I'm using a second tab to actually talk about the expenses and the accounts. I set mine up this way because I wanted to see everything on one tab. Okay, so let's move on to our expenses. I created a second tab, and this is where I'm listing out the expenses. This is where you're going to spend a lot of time organizing and setting things up. Okay, so let's start with the columns that I created. The most important column and the first columns that I created when I first started doing this was the expense and the payment. What I'm actually spending my money on and how much it is. That's really where you're going to start. And then later I kind of started, editing how I listed out my expense. So as you can see, like the first couple of categories, I have food, house, and I have subscriptions, and I'm detailing what those subscriptions are. So initially I didn't start that way, but I found that as my expense list grew, I needed to find better ways of categorizing and being able to sort and filter. So start listing out your expenses and list out the payment. Let's just start with that. Okay, so once you have your expenses and the payments listed out, this is really when you're going to have to think about how you best want to sort and filter. So I added some categories like frequency. There are going to be some expenses that you have that you're, daily, weekly, monthly, and even quarterly. You may want to list this on here. Some people have, like a lot of teachers, they get paid monthly, so a lot of their expenses are monthly. Or they pay them on a monthly basis. So really depending on what type of expenses you have and how often you have them is going to determine your frequency. The another category that I later added was if the expense was a fixed expense, meaning my cable bill is $100 a month and it stays that way, versus a variable bill like food. Milk can be $10 one week and $20 the next week. So having those variable and fixed, that really kind of helped me focus in on some variable expenses that I actually had a little more control over. All right, so as you can see, I am just messing around with the columns, the fields, the spacing, colors, just to show that using Excel can be extremely, easy. It's just easy and a little more time efficient and effective as it relates to categorizing things. Instead of writing things down and using pens and color markers, I find that using an Excel spreadsheet, saving it on my desktop, I can come back and revise and edit and filter when I'm working on a very specific project. So that's all I'm showing here in this footage. So try it, set it up, try it, and customize this to work the best for you. So once you've plugged in all of your numbers for your expenses, you are going to take that dollar amount and move it over to the next category, which is going to be our checking and savings account. So if I didn't say it before, you're going to have your income, the total number from your income, and then you're also going to have the total number from your expenses. Those figures are going to be placed into the next tab on the spreadsheet. Okay, so now this is the fun part. To me, this is the fun and also can be the most challenging part of this whole budget setup. And the reason why I say that is, when we're looking at our budget and we're looking at our goals, we may be in a habit of doing something a specific way. And it really may not be the best way, but we're not willing to switch. So this has happened to me. I have my budget set up a certain way. I'll just use me for an example. And I use one card to pay everything. And that works for a while until it doesn't work. And that's when I have to really realize that, yes, this is easier, this is simple, but it's also preventing me from keeping track. So that's the thing. It's more so of keeping track of those variable expenses. So let's dive into the different types of accounts that I recommend that you have. I have these accounts already set up and I've used them in this method. I got out of that method and switched to something a little more, easy and quick, using my credit cards and my rewards, which is great. But I'm going to go back to this process because I feel like I was able to have a better control over those variable expenses. So I'm going to explain this right now. All right, so for the sake of this example, we're going to take our income. We're going to say that our income is $3,000 per month. We're going to take that and we're going to plug it right into the top of the spreadsheet with our accounts because we're going to divide that income out. All right, so most people have their regular checking account, which they have a direct deposit, and that check goes right into that main account. You pay all of your bills out of that main account, and you continue that cycle. Now, listen, if this is working for you, maybe you don't have a whole lot of variable expenses like I do, you may decide to just keep that one checking account. I, on the other hand, I recommend that you have multiple accounts at multiple financial institutions because a part of our wealth building strategies is to have multiple relationships with multiple financial institutions. Okay, so this is one of them. I recommend having your main checking account, and yes, your check can be direct deposited into that, but also have a second checking account that is from not with the same institution. So that is what I have set up. So you have your main checking account, and then let's just call it checking account number 2. I have mine set up to have a certain dollar amount from my check. So half of my check goes into one account, half of my check goes into the checking account number 2. Now, from that, we are also going to set up an online savings account. This is an online savings account that's not attached to our main bank because we want out of sight, out of mind. Remember, we're setting and forgetting when it comes to paying ourselves first. And the savings account is one of our methods of paying ourselves first. We'll talk about savings account later on, but right now we're just focusing on these checking. I'm just messing around with the spreadsheet in this footage as I'm talking through this. So I hope that I can explain that better. So we have 2 checking accounts. One checking account we're going to use for our fixed expenses, and one checking account we're going to use for our variable expenses. All right. And the variable expenses is really where, we find that it's hard to track. If you have a checking account and you're just swiping that card, it's very difficult to track. So what we're going to do with our checking account number 2 that we are using to pay our variable expenses, we're going to take that a step further and maybe use some cash cards, maybe use a credit card, maybe even a gift card to further put a real budget on things. And for me, it's going to be our food. It's going to be our groceries, our food, our kind of fun food. I'm going to probably just categorize this as food and entertainment. And that's where I'm going to put a budget of, maybe $200 a week, maybe $150 a week. I'm still messing around with the numbers, but by the beginning of the year, I'm going to have a set dollar amount. And I'm more than likely going to be using one of my cash cards or something that is tied to this checking account number 2. So that's going to be another part of this no penny left behind campaign that I will break down. But just for the foundation, we understand we have 2 checking accounts, one for variable, one for fixed, and then we also have a savings account that is online that we're going to be using to pay ourselves first. All right. All right. So now our last section of the spreadsheet is going to be where we're monitoring our savings account balances every month. Now, this is going to be an indicator that this process is working. If you don't have to dive into your savings account to pull out money to pay for any of your expenses, then we know that the budget is working. If it's not working, we can now figure out where we need to tweak things. If we're overspending, if there's nothing that we can cut back on, then now we know we've got to move into, how can we increase our income? So now we know that it's not an overspending of things. We've cut costs, we've reduced things, we've canceled subscriptions that we're no longer using. And if we still find that we're dipping into our savings account, it could be 2 things. It could be a lack of income or not enough income, or it could just be that we need to increase our lifestyle budget, okay? All right, so that's the setup for the No Penny Left Behind budget. Listen, I'm excited about this. I'm actually using many savings and budgeting techniques that I've tried over the years, but the one added component is the use of either a cash card, a gift card, some type of card I'm gonna add to my wallet. That way I can really see my budget on a daily basis, and we're gonna go from there. But all right, so let me know down in the comments, are you going to start the No Penny Left Behind challenge? Do you have any savings and budgeting techniques that you want to share with us? Please let us know.